My heart raced with excitement as I arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel for my sister Jenna's wedding. After months of preparation and thousands spent on the perfect gift, I followed the seating chart to table 23. Confusion washed over me as I was directed outside to the hallway, next to overflowing trash cans. Jenna approached in her gleaming white gown. "Guess you don't count enough for the main room," she smirked. Silently, I gathered my beautifully wrapped gift, stood up, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. I stepped into the warm June air outside the Grand Plaza Hotel, my hands trembling around the carefully wrapped vintage jewelry box. The valet attendant gave me a sympathetic look as tears threatened to spill down my cheeks. This moment felt like the culmination of a lifetime of being the lesser sister, the afterthought, the disappointment. Growing up in our middle-class home in Springfield, Jenna and I shared a bedroom but lived in different worlds. While I struggled with dyslexia that made reading a daily battle, Jenna sailed through academics with straight A's. By high school, she was class president, debate team champion, and valedictorian. I still remember sitting in the audience at her graduation, watching our parents Thomas and Patricia beam with pride, their faces glowing with an admiration they never directed at me. "That's our daughter," Dad would tell strangers, pointing to Jenna's achievements. When I finally graduated with my teaching degree after years of struggle, Mom simply said, "Well, at least kindergartners don't need much teaching." 3 months ago, when the cream-colored wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox, I stared at it for hours. The embossed silver lettering announced Jenna Taylor and Connor Walsh's union, requesting the honor of your presence. I traced my finger over my name on the envelope, wondering if it was an obligation invitation or a genuine desire to have me there. "Are you going?" my roommate Laura asked when she saw me deliberating. "She's still my sister," I said, though the words felt hollow even then. I spent the next week searching for a gift that might finally earn Jenna's approval. Through online auctions and antique dealers, I tracked down our grandmother's pearl and sapphire necklace that had been sold during our parents' financial troubles years ago. Grandmother had always promised it to Jenna, the responsible one. It cost nearly 3 months of my teacher's salary, but I convinced myself it would be worth it to see genuine appreciation in my sister's eyes. The weeks before the wedding were a masterclass in exclusion. Despite my offers to help address invitations or assemble favor boxes, Jenna assigned those tasks to her bridesmaids, a group that included 2 distant cousins and 3 women she'd only known for a year through her law firm. "The bridal party is full," she explained when I asked why I wasn't included. "Besides, bridesmaid dresses are expensive, and we know teachers don't make much." I swallowed the hurt and attended the pre-wedding dinner anyway, where I was seated at the far end of the table with Connor's elderly great-aunt who was hard of hearing. Throughout the evening, I watched Jenna's friends whisper and laugh, occasionally glancing my way. During a bathroom break, I overheard Jenna's voice from around the corner. "Mom insisted I invite her," she told her maid of honor, Ashley. "You know how family obligations go. Just seat her somewhere out of the main photographer's sightline." I froze, my hand on the bathroom door, as Ashley replied, "Your sister seems nice enough. Why don't you two get along?" "Mandy has always been jealous of me," Jenna said with a sigh. "It's exhausting dealing with her neediness." I slipped back to my seat, my cheeks burning with humiliation. The day before the wedding, while helping set up centerpieces despite not being officially part of the preparation team, I stepped outside for fresh air in the hotel garden. That's when I saw Connor, Jenna's fiancé, in what appeared to be an intense conversation with a petite blonde woman I'd never seen before. "You promised things would change after the wedding," the woman hissed, her hand gripping Connor's arm. "Keep your voice down, Tara," Connor whispered harshly. "This isn't the place." "When is the place? After you're legally bound to her? After you've spent her family's money?" The woman, Tara, looked on the verge of tears. I ducked behind a topiary as Connor glanced around nervously. "Just trust me. Everything is going according to plan." They moved deeper into the garden, their voices fading, but the encounter left me uneasy. Should I tell Jenna? Would she even believe me? Or would she accuse me of trying to ruin her special day out of jealousy? With our history, I knew the answer. Instead, I filed the information away, deciding to keep a watchful eye on Connor throughout the wedding weekend. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. I woke up in my hotel room and spent extra time on my appearance, applying makeup carefully and styling my hair in loose waves. The mint green dress I'd chosen was modest but flattering, expensive enough to show I cared but not so flashy as to draw attention from the bride. "Today is about family," I told my reflection in the mirror. "Whatever has happened between us, Jenna is still my sister, and this is her big day." I arrived at the venue 90 minutes before the ceremony, hoping to be useful and perhaps find a moment to connect with Jenna before the festivities began. The Grand Plaza's ballroom had been transformed into a fairy tale setting, with crystal chandeliers draped in white flowers, tables adorned with elaborate centerpieces, and a dance floor that sparkled with inlaid lights. "Excuse me," I said to a harried-looking woman with a clipboard. "I'm Mandy Taylor, the bride's sister. Is there anything I can help with?" The woman, Stephanie, according to her name tag, looked confused. "Jenna's sister? I thought Ashley was her only sister." "Half sister through her dad," I lied quickly, the familiar pain of erasure washing over me. "Is Jenna available?" "The bride is not to be disturbed during final preparations," Stephanie replied firmly, checking something off her list. "Guests will be seated beginning at 4:30. I wandered the perimeter of the ballroom, admiring the clearly expensive decorations. Jenna and Connor had spared no expense, from the ice sculpture of intertwined swans to the live string quartet warming up in the corner. I estimated the cost would have funded my classroom supplies for the next decade. My parents arrived looking picture perfect. Dad in his tailored suit and Mom in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They kissed my cheeks distractedly. "Oh, good. You found something appropriate to wear," Mom said, eyeing my dress with mild approval before her attention was captured by the arrival of Dad's business partner. "Thomas! Patricia! So good to see you," the man boomed, and just like that I was forgotten as they moved away to greet more important guests. As 4:30 approached, a young man in a formal suit began directing guests to their tables. I joined the line, clutching my gift and invitation. "Name, please?" he asked when it was my turn. "Mandy Taylor. I'm the bride's sister." He scanned his list, flipping between pages with a deepening frown. Taylor. "Ah, here you are. Table 23. I followed his directions but found myself confused when the numbers stopped at 20 at the far edge of the ballroom. "Excuse me," I called to the usher. "Jackson, according to his name tag, I don't see table 23. Jackson's cheeks reddened slightly. Tables 21 through 25 are accommodating overflow seating. If you'll follow me." He led me through a service door into a hallway where several round tables had been hastily set up near the restrooms. Table 23 was the farthest one, directly beside the service area where 3 large trash cans stood overflowing with flower trimmings and packaging materials. A single-place card with Mandy, handwritten in what was clearly not the calligrapher's script used for the main room, sat atop a plain white plate. Jackson couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry about this. Would you like me to get you some water while you wait for other guests?" "Are there other guests assigned to this table?" I asked, already knowing the answer. I'm not sure," he mumbled before escaping back to the main room. I sat alone, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and conversation through the doors. Servers bustled past, giving me pitying glances. One older waitress paused long enough to whisper, "Been working weddings 20 years, honey, and never seen family seated out here. You okay?" I nodded stiffly, fighting tears. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The smell of garbage began to permeate the warm hallway. I checked my phone. The ceremony would start soon, and still I sat alone at my trash-adjacent table. Then the service door swung open, and Jenna appeared in her wedding gown, a spectacular creation of lace and crystals that hugged her perfect figure. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought she'd come to rectify the mistake. Instead, she looked at me with a mixture of amusement and disdain. "Comfy out here? There must be a mistake with the seating chart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "No mistake. We ran out of room in the main hall for, important people." She adjusted her veil. "Guess you don't count enough for the main room." "At least you got invited." Mom was quite insistent about that. In that moment, something broke inside me, not with a crash, but with the quiet finality of ice cracking on a winter lake. Years of accepting scraps of affection, of making excuses for their behavior, of hoping that someday I would be enough, it all crystallized into a sudden, calm clarity. Without a word, I picked up my purse and the carefully wrapped gift that had cost me so much. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked past my sister toward the exit. "Where are you going?" Jenna called, sounding more annoyed than concerned. "The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. I didn't answer, didn't turn, just continued walking with as much dignity as I could muster through the lobby and out the front doors. Behind me, I heard a commotion start, raised voices, the service door slamming. I didn't look back as I handed my ticket to the valet and waited for my car, my heart pounding but my mind strangely, peacefully clear. I was barely 5 miles from the hotel when my phone began ringing incessantly. First my mother, then my father, then a barrage of texts from numbers I didn't recognize. I silenced the ringer and pulled into a highway rest stop, needing a moment to process the enormity of what I'd done. Walking away from my sister's wedding was the most decisive stand I'd ever taken against my family's treatment. Part of me felt liberated. Another part worried I'd just confirmed everything they'd always said about me being difficult and dramatic. I switched my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and 29 text messages. As I scrolled through them, my stomach clenched. Most were variations of the same accusation. "How could you steal the wedding rings?" From my mother, "You've gone too far this time. Come back immediately and return what you took." From my father, "The police are being called." "This isn't funny, Mandy." From a cousin I barely knew. My hands shook as I called my cousin Amy, the only family member who'd ever shown me consistent kindness. "Amy, what's happening?" "I'm getting crazy messages about wedding rings." Amy's voice came in a hushed whisper. "Mandy, where are you? It's absolute chaos here. The wedding rings are missing, and Jenna is hysterical, telling everyone you took them as revenge for something she did." "What? I didn't take any rings. I left because she seated me next to literal garbage." "I know that sounds like Jenna," Amy sighed. "But the rings disappeared right after you left, and well, you have to admit the timing looks bad." I thought back to all the times throughout our childhood when Jenna had broken something or failed to complete a chore and somehow convinced our parents it was my fault. Like the time she broke Mom's favorite vase during an indoor volleyball practice but tearfully insisted I had knocked it over out of jealousy. Or when she claimed I'd sabotaged her science project after she procrastinated and had nothing to turn in. "She's doing it again," I whispered, more to myself than Amy. "She's setting me up to take the fall for something." "Maybe you should come back and clear this up," Amy suggested. "Your parents are talking about filing a police report." My initial instinct was to keep driving, to put as much distance as possible between myself and the toxic family dynamics that had defined my entire life, but being accused of theft was serious. With a deep breath, I started my car and turned back toward the Grand Plaza. When I arrived 30 minutes later, a security guard was waiting at the entrance. "That's her," my mother hissed, pointing dramatically as I approached the lobby. "She's always been jealous of her sister." "Mom, I didn't take anything," I said firmly. "I left because Jenna seated me in the hallway by the trash." "Always the victim," my father snapped. "Your sister is devastated on what should be the happiest day of her life. Those rings cost a fortune." A small crowd had gathered, including several guests who were watching the drama unfold with poorly concealed interest. The ceremony had obviously been delayed, and Jenna was nowhere in sight. "I need to speak with security privately," I insisted, refusing to be part of this public spectacle. The security guard, a middle-aged man named Bill according to his badge, nodded and led me to a small office off the main lobby. My parents tried to follow, but he firmly closed the door. "Now, Miss Taylor, why don't you tell me what happened from your perspective?" I explained everything. My arrival, the hallway seating, Jenna's smirking comment, and my decision to leave. I never went anywhere near the bridal suite or wherever the rings were kept. I walked straight from that hallway table to the front entrance. Bill made notes, asking occasional clarifying questions. "Do you have any idea why your sister might think you took the rings?" "Honestly? Because it's easier to blame me than admit she might have misplaced them or that someone else took them. It's a pattern with us. As Bill was about to respond, there was a knock at the door. Amy poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you should know something. She slipped inside and closed the door. I overheard Jenna talking to her maid of honor. The rings were supposed to be part of your gift to them. That's why she's accusing you of taking them. What? My gift was our grandmother's necklace, not rings. Amy looked confused. That's not what she told everyone. She said you promised to provide family heirloom rings and then took them back when you got angry about the seating. The absurdity of the accusation left me speechless. Not only was Jenna lying about my gift, but she was using that lie to cover for the missing rings. Bill looked between us. This seems like a family misunderstanding. Let me check the security footage from the main entrance to confirm Miss Taylor's movements. While he stepped out, Amy quickly filled me in on the chaos that had erupted after my departure. Jenna had apparently gone to retrieve the rings for the ceremony, only to find them missing from the locked box in the bridal suite. Rather than admit they were lost, she'd immediately blamed me, creating a narrative about my jealousy and resentment. The weird thing is, Amy whispered, she didn't even seem that upset about the rings themselves, almost like she was, relieved to have a reason to delay the ceremony. Before I could process that curious detail, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't Bill returning, but a tall man with sandy brown hair and serious eyes that I recognized as Connor's best man. You're Mandy, right? He asked, glancing cautiously at Amy. I'm Drew Callahan, Connor's best man. I need to speak with you privately. It's important. Amy squeezed my hand supportively. I'll run interference with your parents. Text me if you need backup. After she left, Drew closed the door and lowered his voice. I know you didn't take those rings. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. But how can you be so sure? Because I think I know what's really going on here, and it has nothing to do with you. His expression was grim. I have information about Connor that might explain everything, but we can't talk here. Too many ears. Can you meet me in the hotel bar in 20 minutes? Use the side entrance to avoid your family. I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. Finding none, I nodded slowly. 20 minutes. As Drew turned to leave, I caught his arm. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. His jaw tightened. Let's just say I've seen enough to know when someone's being used as a convenient scapegoat, and I'm tired of watching it happen. The hotel bar was dimly lit and nearly empty. Most guests still gathered in the ballroom where the wedding had been delayed indefinitely. I slipped in through the service corridor as Drew had suggested, spotting him in a corner booth far from the bartender's curious ears. Did anyone follow you? He asked, as I slid into the seat across from him. No, but security has probably reviewed the footage by now and cleared me of taking anything. It won't stop my family from believing what they want to believe, though. Drew nodded grimly. Family can be blind when they want to be. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then slid it across the table. Take a look at these. The screen showed a series of text messages between Connor and someone saved as T. The exchanges were intimate and frequent, with timestamps showing conversations happening right up through yesterday. I miss how your skin feels. Just a few more days until all this wedding nonsense is done. She suspects nothing. Her family's money will solve everything. I looked up, stomach churning. Who is T? Tara Reynolds. Connor's ex-girlfriend. Drew's expression was hard to read. Or, should I say, not so ex-girlfriend. The woman in the garden, I murmured. I saw them arguing yesterday, but I didn't know who she was. Drew's eyebrows shot up. You saw them together? Here at the hotel? I nodded, explaining the heated exchange I'd witnessed. He told her everything was going according to plan. I wasn't sure what to make of it. That fits with what I've discovered. Drew pulled out several folded papers from his jacket pocket. Hotel receipts. Connor's been meeting Tara at the Westlake Inn twice a week for the past 6 months, all through the engagement. Always pays cash, but uses his loyalty points account. Sloppy. How did you get these? I asked, scanning the dates on the receipts. Drew's expression clouded. Connor and I have been friends since college. 6 months ago, he started acting strange, secretive phone calls, unexplained absences, asking me to cover for him with Jenna. I thought maybe he was getting cold feet about the wedding, but then I saw him with Tara at a restaurant when he was supposed to be at a business conference in Denver. And you didn't tell Jenna? I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. I confronted Connor first. He swore it was just closure, tying up loose ends before the wedding. I believed him because I wanted to. Drew ran a hand through his hair. By the time I realized the affair was ongoing, invitations had been sent, deposits paid. I told myself it wasn't my place to blow up his relationship. The weight of this knowledge settled between us. So Connor is cheating on my sister. It's terrible, but what does this have to do with missing wedding rings? That's what I've been trying to figure out. The timing is too coincidental. Drew leaned forward. I think Connor might be planning something bigger than just an affair. The rings going missing right before the ceremony? Your convenient exit providing a scapegoat? It feels orchestrated. You think Connor took the rings? Why would he steal from his own wedding? I'm not sure yet. But there's more. Drew hesitated. Connor has a gambling problem. He's been in deep to some serious people for years. I helped him out a few times in college, but lately, it's gotten worse. Way worse. The pieces started connecting in my mind. And Jenna comes from money. Our parents have significant investments, property holdings. Exactly. What if this whole wedding is just? Drew trailed off, clearly uncomfortable completing the thought. A con, I finished for him. Access to family money to pay off gambling debts. It's a theory. But we need more evidence before making accusations that serious. I considered our options. Connor's room, would he have left anything there that might confirm your suspicions? The bridal suite is off, limits, but he was using a separate room to get ready. Room 412. Drew checked his watch. With the ceremony delayed, it should be empty now. Everyone's downstairs dealing with the ring situation. Can you get us in? Drew pulled out a key card. Best man privileges. I was supposed to make sure his stuff got moved to the honeymoon suite after the ceremony. 20 minutes later, we were carefully searching Connor's temporary room. Drew checked the closet while I examined the desk and nightstand drawers. Nothing unusual in his luggage, Drew reported. Just clothes and toiletries. I was about to give up when I noticed the corner of a folder sticking out from between the mattress and box spring. Pulling it free, I found a manila envelope stuffed with financial documents. Drew, look at this. We spread the papers across the bed. Bank statements, account numbers, and transfer authorizations. What initially looked like standard financial planning for newlyweds soon revealed something far more sinister. These are for accounts in Jenna's name, but with transfer authorizations signed by her. He's been moving money. I pointed to a series of transactions. Small amounts at first, then larger sums over the past month. Drew examined a spreadsheet with growing alarm. This is from Taylor & Associates. Isn't that your parents' investment firm? I nodded. Jenna works there as a partner. Connor is their accountant. My finger traced a column of numbers. These look like client account numbers. Why would he have access to those? Further examination revealed the disturbing truth. Connor had been systematically embezzling from the firm's client accounts, using Jenna's credentials and signatures that appeared forged. The total already exceeded $300,000. He's stealing from the firm, Drew whispered, and setting Jenna up to take the fall. A note in the margin of one document sent chills down my spine. Final transfers day after ceremony. Flight confirmed. He's planning to disappear after the honeymoon, I realized. Take the money and run. Drew's face hardened. We need to tell Jenna. Now. I hesitated, years of dismissal and disbelief making me cautious. She won't believe me. She'll think I'm trying to ruin her wedding out of spite. She'll believe evidence, Drew insisted, gathering the documents. And she'll believe me. I'm Connor's best friend. I have no reason to lie about this. As we debated our next move, my mind drifted to a rare moment of connection with Jenna years ago. After I'd been stood up for junior prom, she had found me crying in our shared bathroom. Instead of mocking me, she had silently applied concealer to my puffy eyes, styled my hair, and told me, "No boy is worth these tears. You're a tailor, and tailors don't let people see them break." It was the closest thing to sisterly affection she'd ever shown me. Despite everything, she was still my sister. I couldn't let her marry a man who was using her as cover for his crimes. Let's make copies first, I suggested. If something happens to these originals, we'll need backup. We used the hotel's business center to make duplicate sets of every document, then carefully returned the originals to the envelope. Ready? Drew asked as we headed toward the elevator. No, I admitted. But necessary things rarely wait for readiness. The elevator doors opened to reveal chaos in the lobby. Security guards were speaking urgently into radios. Guests were clustered in confused groups, and my parents were gesturing frantically to a man in a police uniform. What now? I whispered to Drew. A hotel staff member rushing past overheard me. The groom is gone, she said, and so are all the wedding gifts. What do you mean gone? Drew grabbed the staff member's arm. Connor is missing? The young woman nodded, eyes wide. Left through the service entrance about 30 minutes ago. Took all the gift envelopes and anything that looked valuable from the gift table. Security's reviewing footage now. I felt the blood drain from my face. The necklace, I whispered. My gift to Jenna, our grandmother's necklace. It's worth thousands. Drew and I exchanged glances, the documents in our hands suddenly seeming both crucial and insufficient. Connor hadn't just been planning to disappear after the honeymoon. He'd accelerated his timeline. We need to find Jenna, I said, scanning the lobby. Last I saw, she was in the bridal lounge having a complete meltdown, the staff member offered before hurrying away. We navigated through clusters of confused guests toward the back of the venue, where the bridal party preparations had taken place earlier. 2 bridesmaids stood guard outside the lounge door, their perfect makeup now smudged from tears. You can't go in there, Ashley, the maid of honor said when she spotted me. Haven't you done enough damage? Ashley, this is important, Drew insisted. We have information about Connor that Jenna needs to hear immediately. Connor? She spat the name. That lying piece of garbage disappeared with half the wedding gifts. Security caught him on camera stuffing envelopes into his pockets before sneaking out a back door. That's what we need to talk to Jenna about, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's worse than you think. Ashley studied my face, then Drew's, before reluctantly stepping aside. Fine, but I'm warning you, she's in a state. The scene inside the bridal lounge was one of devastation. Jenna sat in a heap of white satin and lace on the floor, her carefully styled hair now falling around her tear-streaked face. My parents hovered nearby, my mother repeatedly saying, "This can't be happening," while my father was on the phone, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "We're going to sue that bastard for every penny," he was saying. "No, the police are already here." "Yes, the gifts too. Everything." Jenna looked up as we entered, her expression shifting from despair to rage when she saw me. "You," she hissed. "Come to gloat? Happy now that my wedding is ruined?" I approached cautiously, like one might a wounded animal. "Jenna, I had nothing to do with any of this. But Drew and I found something you need to see." "More lies? First the rings, now what?" Drew stepped forward, his calm presence a counterpoint to the emotional chaos of the room. "Jenna, I've been Connor's friend for years, but what he's done is unforgivable. He's been lying to all of us." My father ended his call abruptly. "What are you talking about? What could possibly be worse than stealing the wedding gifts and disappearing on the wedding day?" Drew handed him the folder of documents. "This, sir. Connor has been embezzling from your firm for months using Jenna's credentials." My father's face drained of color as he scanned the papers. My mother peered over his shoulder, gasping at what she saw. $300,000? She whispered. "From client accounts?" Jenna scrambled to her feet, snatching the papers. "That's impossible. Connor wouldn't. He couldn't." Her voice faltered as she recognized her own forged signature on multiple documents. "These are fake. They have to be. They're real," I said gently. Drew and I found them hidden in Connor's room. He was planning to disappear after the honeymoon, but for some reason he moved up his timeline. "The rings?" Drew realized suddenly. "Jenna, when exactly did you notice the rings were missing?" She looked confused by the question. Right before the ceremony was supposed to start. "The best man, you, and maid of honor were supposed to have them." "But I never received them," Drew said. "You were supposed to give them to me and Ashley this morning." A strange expression crossed Jenna's face, something between guilt and panic. They were in a special box. In my suite. I was going to hand them over right before the ceremony for safekeeping. My father's lawyer instincts kicked in. Jenna, where exactly were these rings kept? Who had access? Just me, and, her voice trailed off as realization dawned, and Connor. He helped me pick out the box, said it would be more romantic if we kept them together until the last moment. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Connor hadn't just stolen wedding gifts on his way out. He'd planned to take the valuable rings as well. How much were they worth? Drew asked quietly. 20,000? My father answered grimly. Family heirlooms reset with additional diamonds. Insurance hasn't been finalized yet. I watched as Jenna's expression cycled through disbelief, betrayal, and finally a cold fury that transformed her tear-stained face. He used me, she whispered. All of it, the romance, the proposal, the wedding, it was all to access the firm's accounts. My mother moved to comfort her, but Jenna shrugged away the touch. For the first time, I felt genuine sympathy for my sister. Despite our troubled relationship, no one deserved such a calculated betrayal. We need to contact the bank immediately, my father said, already dialing. Freeze the accounts, stop any pending transfers. And file a police report about the embezzlement, Drew added. They're already here for the theft, my mother reminded us. Thomas, should we tell them about this too? As my parents launched into crisis management mode, I found myself standing awkwardly on the periphery, neither needed nor acknowledged in their family unit. I should go, I murmured to Drew. He caught my arm. Mandy, wait. You helped uncover this. You were trying to protect your sister despite everything. A harsh laugh from Jenna drew our attention. Protect me? Mandy's probably thrilled to see me humiliated like this. Karma, right? For all the times I treated her like she didn't matter? The raw honesty of her statement caught me off guard. It was the first time Jenna had ever acknowledged her behavior toward me. I'm not thrilled, I said quietly. I wouldn't wish this kind of betrayal on anyone. Not even you. Our eyes met across the room, two sisters who had never truly known how to be sisters, and something unspoken passed between us. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first fracture in the wall that had always divided us. The moment was broken by a commotion at the door as two police officers entered with the hotel's security director. Miss Taylor? One officer addressed Jenna. We have some developments regarding the missing items and your fiancé. Former fiancé, she corrected sharply. We've located his vehicle in the parking garage, but it appears he switched to another car that was waiting for him. We have the license plate from security cameras and have issued an alert. As the officers continued explaining the situation, I noticed Jenna becoming increasingly agitated, her breathing shallow and hands trembling. Jenna? I took a step toward her. Are you okay? She shook her head almost imperceptibly, then suddenly blurted out, The rings weren't stolen. The room went silent. What did you say? My father asked. Jenna's shoulders slumped in defeat. The rings. Connor didn't take them. They're in my cosmetic bag. I hid them there this morning. For several seconds, no one spoke. The police officers exchanged confused glances while my parents stared at Jenna in disbelief. You hid the rings? My mother finally managed. But why would you? Why would you say Mandy took them? Jenna couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I was having doubts this morning. Serious doubts. But everything was set. 200 guests, thousands spent, everyone's expectations. I just needed time. A reason to delay without admitting I wasn't sure. So, you accused your sister of theft? My father's voice rose in disbelief. Do you realize we were about to file a police report? The older police officer cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the actual crimes committed here. Mr. Walsh has still taken valuable items and apparently committed fraud. Yes, Drew stepped forward with the folder of evidence. Officers, this is documentation of systematic embezzlement from Taylor and Associates investment firm. Connor Walsh has stolen approximately $300,000 over the past several months by forging signatures and manipulating accounts. While the police examined the documents, I found myself watching Jenna. Behind her frozen, shocked expression, I sensed something crumbling. Not just her wedding day dreams, but perhaps the carefully constructed identity she'd maintained our entire lives. Perfect Jenna, golden child, always right, always superior, was publicly facing not just betrayal, but the humiliation of her own poor judgment. The officers requested statements from everyone, particularly from Drew and me, regarding our discovery of the embezzlement evidence. As we were providing details, a hotel security guard burst into the room. "We've got a location on Walsh," he announced. "Traffic cameras picked up the car heading toward the interstate. State police have been notified." My father immediately took control of the situation, arranging for a complete inventory of stolen items and coordinating with the firm's security team to lock down all accounts potentially compromised. My mother fluttered anxiously between comforting Jenna and apologizing to various important guests. Throughout the chaos, I noticed Jenna becoming increasingly withdrawn, her responses mechanical. Finally, as a brief lull fell over the room, she turned to face me directly. "You weren't trying to ruin my wedding," she said, her voice so low I almost missed it. "But I was trying to hurt you. The seating by the trash cans, that was deliberate. I wanted you to feel small." The raw honesty was so unexpected that for a moment I couldn't respond. "Why?" I finally asked. "What did I ever do to make you hate me so much?" "You existed," she whispered, and to my shock, tears began streaming down her face. "You were always there, watching me, making me feel like I had to be perfect because you weren't. Dad and Mom put so much pressure on me to succeed, to be the daughter they could brag about because you—" She stopped, perhaps realizing how her words sounded. "Because I was a disappointment, I finished for her." "That's not fair," my mother interrupted, having overheard. "We never said Mandy was a disappointment. We simply had different expectations based on your different abilities." The room had gone quiet, other conversations stopping, as my family's dysfunction took center stage. Even the police officers looked uncomfortable. "Different expectations?" I repeated, years of hurt suddenly crystallizing into clarity. "Mom, you told my college boyfriend that at least one daughter would give you successful grandchildren. Dad, when I got my teaching award last year, you asked if it came with a raise because someone needs to think about retirement planning." My father had the grace to look embarrassed. We may have been a bit focused on practical concerns. "You were cruel," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. "Both of you. You treated me like I was less valuable because I didn't become a lawyer or doctor or whatever you thought would reflect well on you. And you taught Jenna to do the same." "That's not true," my father began, but Jenna cut him off. "It is true," she said quietly. "We all did it. I watched how you treated her and followed your example. It was easier to push Mandy down than risk joining her in your disapproval." The admission hung in the air between us, the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged the dynamic that had shaped our relationships for decades. "Miss Taylor," one of the officers interrupted gently, "we need to discuss the false accusation you made against your sister." Jenna paled. "Am I going to be charged with something?" "Filing a false police report is a serious offense," the officer explained. "However, as no formal report was filed yet, this is primarily a family matter." "I won't press charges," I said immediately, surprising myself again. "But I would like an apology. A real one." Jenna looked at me for a long moment, really looked at me perhaps for the first time in years. "I'm sorry, Mandy. Not just for today, but for everything. Years of everything." The words were simple, but her tone was sincere. It wasn't enough to heal decades of hurt, but it was a start. As the police continued gathering information, the wedding guests had largely dispersed, many leaving messages of sympathy and shock. A hotel manager approached to discuss arrangements for the canceled reception and accommodations. "We have Connor's credit card on file for incidentals," he explained. "But with the circumstances, the firm will cover necessary costs," my father said wearily. "Just provide an itemized statement." In the midst of this practical discussion, Drew pulled me aside. "You were incredible today. Standing up to your family, uncovering Connor's scheme, not many people would have fought for a sister who treated them so poorly." "I didn't do it for her," I admitted. At least not entirely. I did it because it was right." He smiled, a warm expression that reached his eyes. "That says even more about your character." A commotion at the door interrupted our conversation. A police officer entered, radio in hand. "We've got him," he announced. State police apprehended Walsh at a gas station 30 miles north. He had multiple stolen items in his possession, including jewelry and cash. Relief swept through the room. My parents immediately began questioning the officer about recovery of stolen items and the legal process ahead. "What about the woman?" Drew asked. "Was Tara with him?" The officer checked his notes. No female accomplice at the scene, just the suspect. He was using her too, I realized. Just another part of his con. As the immediate crisis began to resolve into a series of practical next steps, I found myself exhausted by the emotional whiplash of the day. What had started as yet another exercise in family disappointment had evolved into something I couldn't yet define. Not reconciliation exactly, but perhaps the first honest conversation we'd had in years. Jenna approached me hesitantly, her wedding dress now rumpled and stained with tears. "What do I do now?" she asked, and I was struck by how young and lost she suddenly seemed without her usual confidence. "You rebuild," I said simply, "one day at a time." For the first time in our adult lives, my sister looked at me not with contempt or competition, but with something approaching respect. 1 year later. The September breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves as I climbed the steps to Jenna's new apartment building. Balancing a housewarming plant in one arm, I punched in the door code she'd texted me earlier. "It's open!" her voice called as I knocked on apartment 22. Stepping inside, I found her surrounded by moving boxes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a far cry from the polished perfection she'd once maintained as religiously as some people attend church. "I brought you a peace lily," I said, setting the plant on a kitchen counter that was still half, covered in packing paper. Supposedly impossible to kill, but I included care instructions just in case. Jenna smiled, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Thanks. I could use something living in here besides me and my regrets." "Hey, no more of that," I reminded her gently. "Forward focus, remember?" The past year had unfolded in ways none of us could have predicted that chaotic wedding day. Connor had been arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and theft. Most of the stolen client funds had been recovered, though the legal and reputational damage to my father's firm had been considerable. Connor ultimately accepted a plea deal resulting in 8 years in prison. For our family, the aftermath had been equally transformative. The public spectacle of the canceled wedding and criminal investigation had forced conversations long buried under layers of pretense and avoidance. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, my parents had called a family meeting at their house. I'd arrived expecting damage control and public relations strategy. Instead, I found them uncharacteristically subdued. "We've been seeing a family therapist," my mother had announced without preamble. "She suggested we invite you both to join us." "A therapist?" Jenna had looked as shocked as I felt. Our family had always maintained the fiction that therapy was for other people who couldn't handle their problems privately. "We've been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about our family dynamics," my father explained, looking years older than he had before the wedding. "The therapist believes we've established patterns that have damaged both of you in different ways." That first joint session had been brutally difficult. Tears, accusations, defensive posturing. I'd left feeling wrung out, but somehow lighter, as though speaking the truth aloud had released some long-held tension in my chest. Over subsequent months, we'd continued the therapy, sometimes together, sometimes in various pairings. Progress came in fits and starts. There were setbacks and old habits that resurfaced during stress, but beneath it all ran a current of genuine effort that I'd never before experienced from my family. "Earth to Mandy," Jenna's voice pulled me back to the present. "Where'd you go just now?" "Just thinking about how much has changed," I admitted. "A year ago, I would never have imagined us voluntarily spending time together." Jenna's expression softened. "I know. I was such a colossal jerk to you. For years. And I was the perpetual victim. Never standing up for myself," I countered. "We both had our roles. We worked together unpacking kitchen boxes, falling into an easy rhythm that still felt new and slightly fragile. After setting up her coffee maker, Jenna pulled 2 mugs from a box. "I have something for you," she said, disappearing into her bedroom. She returned with a small jewelry box. "I've been waiting for the right moment." Inside lay our grandmother's sapphire and pearl necklace, the gift I'd spent months tracking down, only to have it stolen along with the other wedding presents. "How did you get this back?" I gasped, touching the delicate pendant. "The police recovered it from Connor's friend's apartment, the one who drove the getaway car." Jenna watched me carefully. "It was always meant for you, you know. Grandmother told me once that she wanted you to have it, said it matched your eyes." "But you were her favorite?" I said automatically, then caught myself. "Sorry, old habit." "She loved us differently, not unequally. I'm only now understanding the distinction." Jenna pressed the box into my hands. "Please take it. It's yours." I accepted the gift, recognizing it as more than just jewelry. It was an acknowledgement, a rebalancing of our shared history. "Thank you," I said simply. As we continued unpacking, we talked about Jenna's new job at a small family law practice, a significant step down in prestige from the family firm, but one she found more fulfilling. "I'm actually helping people now, not just helping rich people get richer," she explained. "That sounds suspiciously like something a kindergarten teacher might say," I teased. "Maybe some of your bleeding heart is rubbing off on me." She laughed. "Speaking of hearts, how's Drew?" The question brought a smile I couldn't suppress. After the wedding disaster, Drew and I had kept in touch, initially to coordinate statements for the police investigation. Coffee meetings to discuss legal developments had gradually evolved into dinner dates with no pretense of business. 6 months ago, he'd officially moved from Boston to be closer to me. He's good, working on a new environmental law case that has him excited. "And you're happy?" Jenna asked, the question carrying weight beyond its simple words. "I am," I replied honestly, in ways I didn't know were possible. We worked in comfortable silence for a while before Jenna spoke again. "Do you think we'll ever be normal? As a family, I mean." I considered the question carefully. "I think we're finding our own version of normal. It's not perfect, but it's real. That counts for something." Later that evening, as Drew and I walked hand in hand through the park near my apartment, I recounted the day's events. "Sounds like progress," he observed. "Slow but steady. That's what healing looks like, I guess." I leaned into his familiar warmth. "You know, a year ago today, I was sitting next to trash cans at what should have been my sister's wedding." Drew squeezed my hand. "And now? Now I'm helping her build a new life while building my own." I stopped walking to look up at the man who had become such an essential part of that new life. "Thank you for believing in me when I barely believed in myself." "Always," he promised, sealing the word with a kiss. That night, as I carefully placed my grandmother's necklace on my dresser, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The humiliation of that wedding day had seemed like an ending at the time, the final confirmation that I would never be valued by my family. Instead, it had become a beginning. By walking away from that hallway table, I had taken the first step toward genuine self-respect. The chaos that followed had painfully but necessarily broken down the dysfunctional patterns that had defined us for decades. We were all works in progress, my parents struggling to express affection without conditions, Jenna learning to define success on her own terms, me finding my voice after years of silent acceptance. The relationships we were building now felt tentative at times, awkward in their newness, but they held an authenticity that was worth the discomfort of change. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and others is to simply walk away from situations that diminish us, not in anger or vengeance, but in the quiet certainty that we deserve better. And sometimes, unexpectedly, that act of self-respect creates space for genuine transformation. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic relationship or situation to protect your self-worth? What happened afterward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own value. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most beautiful beginnings.